this meeting, then a PDF or some slides will be sent out afterwards as well. So without any further ado, Fiona and Scott, over to yourselves. Thanks.
Good morning. Thank you very much for that intro, Kevin. And I'm just going to share my screen now and show the presentation. So hoping that everybody is seeing those that slide there. As Kevin mentioned there, he's going to man the chat, and we have created some space at the end of the presentation for questions. But as we're going through, if there's anything that pops into your mind in terms of some of the stuff that we're saying, please feel free to put your questions into the chat and we'll aim to answer those at the end. So my name is Fiona Dewar, and I'm here with my colleague Scott Tees, and we are presenting about secure leadership online this morning. Just a little quick bit about each of us. I'm the founder of Pragmatic Leadership, and I've worked in management and leadership roles for over the last 30 years. Started my career in HR and then moved into commercial and operational roles. For the last 4 years, I set myself up as a management consultant, and I also provide training under the Pragmatic Leadership banner. Scott, do you want to do a quick short introduction to yourself too?
Yeah, thank you, Fiona, and good morning, everyone. Delighted to be here. I'm Scott Tees. I'm the founder of Decode Cyber Solutions, which is a consultancy specialising in cybersecurity. But what makes us bespoke from other ones is our main focus is on people rather than tech when it comes to cybersecurity. I've been in looking after people, I would suggest, for over 30 years with my time in the military, and lastly for the last 25 years in Police Scotland, the last 8 of which I was a Police Scotland National Lead for the cybercrime prevention. And for me, the main focus is looking after people and keeping them safe and secure online, and that way they can keep organisations secure. Thank you, Fiona.
So as Scott alluded to there, we run a couple of courses which really focus in on raising awareness of cyber, but also how to embed that culture of awareness within the organisation. And we'll talk about this a lot this morning as we go through the presentation, but what we're really attempting to do is develop organisations that have a business as usual approach to cybersecurity. And so it becomes embedded habit within your organisations. So we run 2 different courses, one for leaders and managers and one for teams. And the one that we're really going to focus in on today and give you a short excerpt from is the leadership and managers one, really looking at how we might try to develop and create a culture of cybersecurity within your organisation. So what are the challenges with cybersecurity? Because it's something that we come across obviously quite often. And one of the big issues for cyber is that in terms of how people perceive it, it's quite often perceived as something that IT deals with. And that's because it's not really easily understood, and the language of it can be a bit confusing. And it's not tangible. We can't see it. We will talk today about in your plants and in your factories, etc., putting your hard hat on, putting your high-vis jacket on, etc., are all things that are tangible, we can see, we understand. But cyber isn't like that. It's almost out in the ether. And therefore, it becomes quite challenging for anybody to understand what their role is within a cyber secure workplace. It can also be seen a little bit as a tick box exercise, and some of you may have undergone something called Cyber Essentials, which is a great program to go through as an organisation. But in a number of the organisations that we've worked with, we see that they go through the Cyber Essentials and then it kind of gets put away in a drawer for a year until the next time they think that they need to either renew it or bring it back out again. So it's a kind of one-off thing as opposed to a habitual thing that's built into the organisation. So all of those things make cybersecurity quite a challenge within organisations to embed and for people to understand what their roles and responsibilities actually are. So we thought this morning we would ask of you a couple of questions. So if you have your phones with you just now, if you can go to menti.com. And if you've not got a phone with you, you could do this on the computer that you're watching from as well. So go to menti.com and then put in the code 7584164. Okay, so once you've done that, you should see your first question. Has your business ever been affected by a cyber attack or cyber fraud attempt? And if you can just answer yes or no to that. Seen as 11 participants so far. Kevin, how many people have we got online just now? Do you know?
We have 21 participants, so 4 from
Okay.
yourselves in Scottish Engineering, so maybe another 17 odds.
Okay, that's fine. Let's see. Not everybody may have been able to get on, so. Brilliant. Okay, we'll leave it there. So that's the first question. And our second question. On a rating of 0 to 5, I believe my business is currently very secure. Either strongly disagree or strongly agree. Brilliant, thank you. Scott, do you have any comments? Oh, it's got another one coming in. I think that's us now, 18. So, Scott, any comments about those results?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Fiona. In the first question, the yes and the no's is almost a sort of 10. The majority is saying, yeah, they have been victim of a cyber attack. What we do say is there are really 3 classes of organisation we should consider themselves in relation to cybersecurity. Those who have been breached, those who will be breached, and those who don't realise they've been breached. So what we would ask organisations is, even if you have been breached or you think you haven't, always be on the lookout, because there is just a matter of time. And that's not a scare tactic. It's just the volume that's going out there. Everyone will at one point be in someone's sort of line of sight to try and breach. So even if you have been victim, not been victim, or you're not sure, just actually be aware that you can be targeted. So it's interesting to see the results. Thank you.
No problem.
Alistair wasn't sure if Donna had spoken to him yesterday, so she may not.
We've got some feedback from somebody.
Yeah, I think it's Stuart Anderson. I think your mic's unmuted, Stuart.
I believe it's Stuart.
There we go.
Sorry, Scott, do you want to carry on?
Yeah, certainly looking at the results, what we tend to look at with businesses is in relation to the impact of some data breach. And what we see quite obviously recently in the news is quite a lot sort of taking part in what's happening. And look at a lot of the things, is a lot of the ransomware and the money it's getting spent. But what we look at is really deeper behind that and what that actual impact can be. And I've just picked off some areas just to quickly cover over, but you could imagine there's a lot more branches of these, so it's really quite in depth when it comes to protecting your data. The first one we look at is at the top left, associated losses. Not only if you're a victim of breach, you may have to replace your IT if it's so badly damaged, but it's the time it's taken to maybe recover, and also the staff, the impact on your staff, not only for them being the sort of productivity dropping, but also the actual welfare impact on the staff as well. Because in my role, I've interviewed a lot of people, and there's a lot of impact in the welfare of staff, and when there is a breach, is it my fault? It could have done more. So really, we've got to look after that as well. And unfortunately, when it comes to breaches, it does reduce potential revenue income. So what you've got to look at is what would happen, how did we recoup that income, and unfortunately sometimes there is job losses. Oh, can you go back one, Fiona? So we've got to be careful of those associated losses. But then there's their impact on the partners and clients, the people you work with on a daily basis, because if you're a victim of one of them or victims of breach, this could extend to yourself and the way you can operate with them. Does the actual breach not only affect you, does it affect them? How are you able to operate and work with them? Are you able to support one another? Again, so there's that sort of knock-on effect, and that continues along your supply chain. Because if someone is victim of a breach, someone that along that supply chain, it could actually impact in other organisations, because you could be one cog in that whole chain. And if you're the victim of breach, or someone in that chain is, that knock-on effect could actually result in damage being done to you, your organisation. So really, there's a bigger picture looking at the knock-on effect. Then the knock-on from that is you're unable to fulfil obligations. So if your organisation is slowed down or prevented from doing their daily operation because of a breach, because the systems are down, you may be unable to fulfil obligations. They may be unable to meet deadlines, support tenders, do what you do on a daily basis, just because everything's either slowed down or you're prevented to work for a period of time. That then had a further knock-on from that is a loss of existing and new clients, because the confidence may go, they may look for someone else to deliver in those times because you're unable to. So really you need to build the confidence and reputation in your organisation. And unfortunately we see now the legal implications as well, and the knock-on from that. We've seen recently British Airways, I read yesterday, settled, I think it was £32 million out of court settlement for the data breach happened in 2018. So we've got that legal implications there, but also we've got things from the ICO, GDPR, etc. But also, what we're also speaking about as well is actually individual litigation against people responsible for the IT and cyber security because of the work that's not been done. They could actually take personal sort of action against individuals, and ultimately the loss of revenue. If you're unable to operate, if you're unable to supply, do your normal daily routine, you're going to lose money. And by losing money, it can have all these different knock-on effects. So when you think of cybersecurity, please don't think of it as a thing. It should be all-encompassing. There's a lot of different cogs to it. And what we've got to remember is it may not only affect you, but it could affect other people, your staff, your clients, your partners, and also it can have a lot of serious implications if you don't get this right. Okay, Fiona? Some statistics we looked at. The first one you quite often hear in the news is human error is the greatest risk. Here they say 95% of breaches are caused by human error. I tend to push against the human error being the greatest risk. To me, in my experience, the greatest risk is the lack of investments in your staff as part of your cybersecurity. A lot of organisations depend fully on their IT and the software and what they do on the tech side, but your staff are a huge area that should be supporting your cyber security. So I mean, instead of blaming, I tend to say to organisations, make them part of it, make them the culture part, that staff are not seen as the cause, they're seen as a real added value to securing your organisation. But looking at the business leaders as well, 68% feel that the cybersecurity risks are increasing, and this is quite clearly seen. It's getting played out daily at the moment in the news with all these different ransomware, basically organisations' data being stolen or held to ransom, and you can see it's been playing out in the news daily. You had the Colonial Pipeline, who the organisation paid $4.4 million in ransom. The GBS Foods, they paid $11 million ransom, and the current one that's going on, the Kaseya, they're estimated that those who securing that data are actually looking around about a $70 million ransom to get that released. Can you imagine the impact that's making on organisations? And they do say it's continuing to grow. They expect over 65,000 ransomware attacks in 2021. So really, there's a real impact in organisations, and there's a real feel through the area that it's only going to increase. So again, we need to really be on our guard and use every element we can to stay secure. Okay, Fiona. And just another statistic there, the average time to identify a breach is estimated around about 207 days. So that means if there's a breach happened today in your organisation, it could be up to the last week in January it's actually detected. So you can imagine what damage can be done, the amount of data that can be exfiltrated, taken out your organisation, used, sold during that period of time. What information can they gather about you, your partners, your clients? What other, because you might not necessarily be the primary target. It could be one of your clients. So again, look at all the data getting done in that time period, and ultimately during that time they can do a lot of damage, and ultimately you see it playing out in the news. A lot of industries been shut down because of the work that's getting done during this period. And as I said there, the average cost for a data breach in 2020, just under $4 million, which when played out, you look at the British Airways, the £32 million fine they had, or out of court settlement, they could cover that. But a £32,000 fine or £32,000 cost could actually shut an organisation down. So it's relative to the size of the organisation, the impact it actually makes on that organisation, the amount of money it costs them. Okay, Fiona? And what we try to do, myself and Fiona, in the work we're doing, is we're not promising a silver bullet. No one can. In this world, there's not one piece of tech, there's not one piece of policy, it can't give that silver bullet. What we're trying to do is create it, make it real for people. So what we can give you is a Mars bar, and people think, a Mars bar? What are you thinking of? What we want people to get is the old sort of saying when the Mars bar adverts, if you can remember back that far, is Mars a day, work, rest and play. What we need people and organisations to think about is, if you're going to be targeted, it won't just be Monday to Friday 9 to 5. It's whilst you're at work, whilst you're at home, and whilst you're socialising, your work, your rest and your play, because all snippets of information that's out there can be used against you. So one thing, if you take away from here, just think of a Mars bar and think, well, what you're doing online, be it during your work time or during your social time or whatever, can that information, can what you're sharing actually be used against you, your organisation? If that's one thing to take away, please take that away, because then you get to think no longer it's Monday to Friday 9 to 5, it's 24/7, 365 days a year. But the thing is, it's not a fear tactic. We all can do something about it because we're all capable. It's just actually speaking to one another and actually with normal life, and we're all capable. It's just getting our minds switched on to that. Thanks, Fiona.
Thanks, Scott. So Scott said there, for us, this is about cyber becoming everyday. And we talk on the courses about attaining unconscious competence for cybersecurity. And in this instance, I suppose we would really liken it to how your employees approach health and safety. And they know what to do, they understand why they have to do it, and it becomes part of their routine. And we want to achieve the same thing in cyber. So we talk about attaining that unconscious competence by raising awareness. So think about that as a new start within your organisation. If you were bringing them into the plant for the first time, you'd be raising their awareness of what they had to do in terms of health and safety. We would advocate that you do the same around cyber. You practice it then so that it becomes habit forming, and so that they then just on an everyday basis do what is right within the organisation. So that's what we are aiming to achieve around cyber security as well. And so taking that ethos of work, rest and play, so that on every day we're just doing it and almost unconsciously competent in how we go about our business. There are a number of different ways that we can look to attain that, and we really aim to try and advocate some practical solutions for employees and their employers as to how that might be achieved. Here's some very short little ones about raising awareness as soon as possible. So things like, as I've just said, at your induction stage, ensuring that your policies are really easily understood and the language is really easily understood. One of the great things I have to say that Scott has is an ability to take cyber and put it into everyday language so that people understand what it is that they're actually looking at, because it brings that intangible thing to become tangible. And any of your policies, any of the things that you're doing within your organization, that's what we advocate too, is that the language becomes easily understood by everybody. Some of the organizations that we've worked with have even developed having people like cyber champions within the organization who just raise the awareness, but ensure that cyber is on the agenda pretty much every day. You establish a routine, you make cybersecurity part of everyone's agenda, and you form those habits. So metaphorically speaking, you are putting your hard hat on when you go in every day. You're putting your high-vis jacket on. That is part of the habit formation that we look to achieve. Scott's got some simple steps initially to take in cyber.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. As I say, the first 6 of these you've probably heard time and time again when people are talking about cyber, but I want to bring it into context and how we will look to get that information over. So people are always speaking about passwords, and really what we're talking about passwords is just really a set of keys. And what we're saying to our individuals is, don't think of a password as something you hear it, don't use the same password for a number of different logins. But it's very similar to a set of keys. You wouldn't use the same set of keys for your front door, your back door, your garage, your car, your office. That's the way we need to get that message across. And the idea is to support staff so they understand this. So it's just part of it and they don't see it as a burden, because ultimately weak passwords is how organisations are compromised right at the front. So really these are the simple steps, but it's actually how to get your staff involved, and it's actually just to make it real for them. And that's the whole thing about cyber, it's just making it real. The second one is backing up your data. Now we hear that a lot of organisations will we back it up here, there, different areas and different methods of doing that. But what we don't hear a lot of conversation about is, right, when do you practice it? I mean, we'll quite often practice fire drills, quite often practice different things. When do we practice it? Do people know what to do if you have to go to your backup? Do people know what the role is? Do people actually know how that's communicated? What do we do? It's practice it. So there's no point having a fantastic backup facilities until something happens. You think, well, what is it we do? Whose role is that? So practice should be like a fire drill. Just practice these things. Just bring it into real life. Managing your usual privileges. Again, people say, oh, that's all tech, they should be doing that. But people should all be aware, because really it's like having the managing director's office and a member of the staff just standing and working in that office as well. That wouldn't happen in the real world. So really in the network, people should only have access to where they should really be and what information they need to have access. And using that, people should understand it should be all staff. It's like someone stranger been in the office. If someone seen a stranger in the office when we were in the offices, somebody would point that out. Who is that person? What they're doing? Why they're here? That should be similar to online. If you're operating online, you see someone with an account coming in, you should be questioning it. Everyone should be questioning that. Who is that? Why are they here? Because that account could be someone that's actually in breaching. So that's, again, we've all got a part to play. Using secure networks, again, bringing it from the virtual to the real world. This is quite simply like being in a cafe and standing on a table and speaking out loud about company business sensitive information. You wouldn't do that. So what we say to organisations, it's the same online. Just secure it. Get it to a place whereby it's secure. I can speak to someone and they can speak to me and no one else is listening in. And that's the way we should be operating. Then we go to things like multi-factor and two-factor authentication. Quite simply put, it's just like going to your bank and taking money out of the cash machine. The two-factor, you wouldn't just go up and press in your number and get money out, because that, again, none of us would have any money. What we really need to do is we've got the bank card. That's the first part of authentication. The second part is putting in the number. So this is why we say to people, don't let that happen to your accounts. Make sure if someone happens to get a way in to the first account, i.e. you've compromised your password, there's another piece of information they need to have before they can get in. It's actually just having those different steps to protect. Simple steps, but once people get to understand and realise, right, I find I've got that, that then begins to make it influence the culture and make it more everyday. Keeping up the systems up to date, quite simply, people say, well, these things we all see popping up on our phone, popping up on screens and thinking a number X amount of 20 updates ready to upload. People think, oh, forget that. But if put it in the real world, if you were driving down the road and the warning light came on your car, would you say, oh, forget it? You wouldn't. You think, I need to do something about it, because if I don't, the car could break down and I could be stranded somewhere. This is just the same as online. So if the updates are there to make sure your systems remain secure and remain up to date, they're able to function. You can come in your work and they're actually able to operate. And this is just the mindset we've got to get to people. But the last two, to me, are really key and important. The staff training awareness, as Fiona had previously mentioned, it shouldn't be a tick in the box. It shouldn't be there's a half-hour test tick in the box once a year, because I guarantee research has shown that after about a day, a lot of it is forgotten, but 60% is forgotten. So we actually need to make it something that's usable, something that happens every day, and something that people are aware of. Because if, for example, the health and safety, if someone's walking down a flight of stairs and if the stairs were soaking wet and slippy, you tend to point out and say, just be careful when you get down those stairs, they're slippy. So why don't we have the same mindset if someone steps away from their desk and leaves their laptop unlocked, or does something similar? You'd say, please don't forget to lock your laptop. We need to look after one another, and that's the way it should be in an organisation. Create that culture. And lastly, attitudes. Attitudes for the organisation have to, for cyber, it's not a thing. Think of cybersecurity and tech and all that. Take the words away and think, what is it really? Really, all it is our life online, and it's another form of communication. So when we socialise, we go out, we speak to people, we socialise online. We want to speak to someone and discuss some matters, we send emails, we do it online. But it's the same everything else we do. What happens in the real world, in the virtual world, it's just an extension. It's another way of communicating, and attitudes should be reflect that. That's from the top of the organisation right through to every member of staff. So how you conduct yourself, how you speak to one another, how you treat one another, how you share information, all that should be online, or in the real world should reflect online as well. It's no different, it's just a different way of communicating. Thanks, Fiona.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So, does anybody have any questions, or have any questions come in while we've been chatting?
Hi, Fiona. There's been one question from Dale Harris at ATL on chat. It says, we get a huge amount of phishing emails every day. How do companies deal with this and keep everyone aware of, especially fake emails purporting to be from Microsoft or email providers?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to answer that. What we do is, obviously, you've got, this is where the mix comes in. This is where the sort of two-tier. Obviously, we get the tech solution whereby it can block any suspicious emails and different ways of what they call sandbox them, take them to the side and get them sort of looked at that way. But in the people aspect, what I say to people is, think about the scenario rather than what's actually been individually said. So they may be asking, do this, etc. But look at the scenario. So if you're getting something from, say, Microsoft saying, this is, do this, A, B, and C, what they're trying to do, the scammers, is force you into doing something quick, force you into doing something really, it needs to be done here and now, like a salesperson, push it into that sale, that purchase. If something comes from your organisation, what we'd ask the organisation to do is follow up, or actually sort of precede it with, we're about to send out an update, this is happening. It should be communicated in different means. But what we'd ask people to do is look at the scenario. What's it actually asking you to do? Don't rush into it if you're not sure, because everyone here in this meeting and out there has got the ability. We all know when something's just not right or you're not too sure. If you're not sure, seek advice and see if it's authentic. And again, ask questions, ask people like myself, ask the people in your organisation, were we meant to do this? Because the whole idea is, don't be forced into something if you're not sure. We all get the ability, and again, just look at the scenario, what you've been asked to do, then take it from there.
Any others that anybody would like to shout out just now?
Sure. Another one here from Abdul at BAE. Is there any information or data on how to deal with an insider threat?
Yep. Again, we've worked with a lot of organisations to do really specialise in this. The thing about insider threat, again, this is where the marriage takes place between the tech and the actual people themselves. Firstly, the tech, we looked at one of the slides we gave is the managing the permissions. People should only have access to that information that they should have. So that should narrow that right down so they can't go about different files. But also the people themselves should be aware if someone, for example, being aware of their actions, what they're doing online, what they're printing, what they're actually communicating. So we should all be aware of looking at unusual behaviour online. So it could be from the line management to see, well, what information maybe they're printing off or saving and downloading. The tech, the IT should be able to support them that and saying what they're doing. But again, just the behaviour as well, because people who may be getting impacted for online insider threat, and it could be for a number of reasons. It could be just for their own financial gain. It could be they're actually being extorted. So what we've got to look at is people and see how they're behaving as well. Are they becoming more reserved? Are they actually not engaging as much? Is there something changing their character? Again, because I don't sit next to someone in an organisation on a daily basis. Obviously now we're online. But on a daily basis, or even how you're communing daily, you can see we all know each other. We all know how we work, get to know each other. So again, if there's a change, we need to maybe, if you're not too sure, highlight that to someone as well, because it could be that person is actually the victim of an extortion attempt, and that's again got insider threat, or ultimately they're doing it for other reasons. But again, so you've got the tech solutions which narrow down the access they've got and who they're speaking to, and also detect if there's unusual sort of movement on their sort of their account. But also the people themselves look after one another. Is there a change in my colleague and my friend's attitudes? What's happening there? And that's the way to deal with it.
Okay, I think one last question here, folks, from Stephen Doherty. Most are aware of antivirus for Windows PCs. What about mobiles? Does it make sense there also?
Yeah, what would suggest is if you can get antivirus, anti-malware on phones, etc., get it on there, because ultimately this is working in the background, looking at different things that's coming into your devices. So again, tech solutions totally support them, and it's good that question's been asked because people are now thinking that way. But yes, antivirus, anti-malware, get them on the phones, etc. I mean, I've got Sophos on my phone, but you've also got things like WebRoot, different things you can download on your phone that would actually keep an eye on what's actually taking place. Because ultimately what we've got to remember is the phone, that mobile phone of you're using could also be connected to your network, your organisation. So your phone could be the weak point and get you in there. So again, yes, treat your phone, treat all other devices as network, and get them secure.
Okay. Is that it, Kevin?
As indeed, no further questions on the chat, unless anyone has any questions verbally. Speak now. If not, I will thank Fiona and Scott for their very interesting input today. Just flag that the recording and the slides from today will be sent out later on in due course. And just a quick plug for the next breakfast briefing, which is on the 4th of August, which is how to engage with the University of Strathclyde, which will be useful for anybody who has any links with the further and higher education sectors as well. So thanks on behalf of our guests, and thanks on behalf of Scottish Engineering. Hope you have an interesting day, folks. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank you,
very
everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.